Double bag alert, double bag alert, double bag alert, folks. That's right. Derrick Henry stays in Baltimore. Brock Purdy goes from Mr. Irrelevant to Mr. Franchise Quarterback. Trey Hendrickson continues to hold out and gives a little bit of the other side of this entire contract holdout situation that not a lot of people see, but I think we finally are able to see it in real time. As well as Elgton Jenkins is holding out and looking for a new deal. That situation is a little bit complicated, but we're going to try our best to explain it. Chris Olave to the Steelers? Maybe. Tinfoil hat on? Maybe. Thoughts on the NFL schedule finally dropping. We finally know when everybody is going to be facing each other in this upcoming season, as well as we have to talk about something a little bit more serious, and that is the NFL, quote-unquote, revamping the accelerator program, which is supposed to increase the likelihood of, for instance, a minority candidate to be an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator or head coach or GM, any of those high level jobs. It's supposed to help you be able to get that a little bit easier. Well, apparently they're going to be revamping it, so we have to talk about that, as well as grades for the NFC North. Okay, all of this and more on the 78th episode of the Football Junkies podcast. I am your host, who currently is not on a team right now, but don't you worry about it, because you know why? I still have my ear to the streets, because we still have a few things that may be brewing in the background. I don't know. Just stay tuned and just continue to listen to the Football Junkies podcast, a podcast that you can listen to on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis, because you know why? I'm your chief Bagrodamus. I'm your chief head of the table. Everything related to the bag, anything and everything related to controversies and potential things that may affect the very foundation of the NFL. But guess what? I am all these things and more. But most importantly, I am your host, Kale. You already know how these things are about to go. This is going to be a great episode, so you already know what I'm about to say. On 3, 1, 2, 3, let's lock in. All right, folks, let's just get into the meat and potatoes of everything that is going on in the league right now. So, I'm actively checking my phone because apparently Fred Warner and the 49ers are very close to a deal. So, at this point, I would not be surprised if we get news about this probably by the end of this episode, or probably when I'm recording, or probably when I'm done editing, or just when I'm about to put out this episode, because we all know every single time when I'm either recording, about to record, editing, or getting ready to put out the episode, guess what happens? Something big always breaks. Now, would it be crazy if, for all intents purposes, Aaron Rodgers decides to finally make his decision today by the time I'm done recording this episode? Okay, that would be great, but then that means I would have to do another maybe hour plus episode, but that's probably not going to happen, so who cares? So let's just get into these bag alerts that are happening, okay? And that is Derrick Henry inking a 2-year, $30 million deal, $25 million guaranteed, and he'll be making $15 million a year. Now, when we look at his stats from this past season, 325 attempts for 1,921 rushing yards, 16 touchdowns, 5.9 rushing yards per carry, 45 rushes of 10 plus yards or more, 53 explosive runs, which is basically runs over 10 plus yards, 3.6 yards after contact per attempt, and 1,323 yards after contact. He was second in carries, second in rushing yards, first in rushing yard touchdowns, and first in forced missed tackles, according to PFF. Folks, let's be real here. Under no circumstance were the Ravens going to let Derrick Henry walk. Derrick Henry has been a breath of fresh air for the run game, or better yet, the entire offense as a whole. Derrick Henry has literally offense so much that literally the entire division decided to invest high into getting a defensive lineman. The Steelers did it this offseason by getting Derek Carman. The Bengals did it in getting Shamar Stewart. And then the Browns did it with Mason Graham. Because you know why? Because Derrick Henry plays such a pivotal role in crushing each and every one of them. Let's be real here, folks. Derrick Henry is going to be a Hall of Famer. All he needs now is just a ring. If he gets a ring, we have to have a whole different conversation about Derrick Henry, folks. Derrick Henry still is a game changer. Still is a force to be reckoned with. Still is the tank that he was when he was with the Titans. And so things are only going to continue to get better with this Ravens offense. However, time is still ticking for the Ravens because you still have to win a ring. Let's be real here, folks. I'm very happy that the Ravens did take care of Derrick Henry. However, the clock is still ticking. And the clock is not going to stop. So at some point, the Ravens have to find a way to breach that final wall that they've been trying to breach for the past 3 or 4 years, and they just need to do it. You have to win. That is the only way you can justify all the moves that you have made for the past 3 to 5 years. If you don't win a Super Bowl, all of this was for nothing. But we'll save that for when we have gut check time, which there's a good chance I may do a gut check time before the season even starts. And then, of course, we'll do one during the season, and we'll probably do one after the season and whatnot. So we'll probably do that, but stay tuned for that. But let's get into the bigger contract, and that is Brock Purdy inking a 5-year, $265 million contract. $181 million guaranteed, and he'll be making $53 million a year. Now, when we look at his stats from this past season, 455 attempts for 300 completions, 3,864 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, 12 picks, 8.5 yards per attempt, and a 65.9 completion percentage. Folks, this is a dream come true for Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy went from being Mr. Irrelevant to now a franchise quarterback. If that ain't a magical story, I don't know what is. But my takeaway from this move is, one, Brock Purdy probably took a discount because I feel like he probably could have asked for 55. But the way that he handled this was so professional that you have to give him kudos for that. He didn't do what anybody else would do, which is, go public and, say that he's not doing this or he's not doing that. No. Even while they were still trying to hash out the deal, he showed up. And that is something that you can hang your hat on. Brock Purdy isn't this dynamic quarterback that he's going to wow you with these dynamic plays. No. But when you need him to get the job done, guess what? He's going to do it. And he's consistently done it since he's been put into the role of being that guy. Now, we have to look at this from a different perspective, though. The 49ers are going to be under a lot of scrutiny this upcoming season if they don't make it to the NFC Championship. Now, for some people, you're probably saying, why in the world would you say that, Kel? And this is why. They have the easiest schedule this upcoming season. Let me say that again. They have the easiest schedule out of the entire league. I'm sorry, there are no excuses at this point. Granted, I understand that your division is a little bit competitive because you have to worry about Sean McVay and Mike McDonald and everybody else. But the fact of the matter is, the NFL gave you a golden ticket to the NFC Championship. So there is no excuse for you guys not to make it to the NFC Championship. I'm sorry. Everybody has gotten paid. Everybody has gotten their deals. But it's time to show up. When are you going to win the big game? Because if you do not win the big game, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, everything that you have done was a waste. Especially for Kyle Shanahan. John Lynch will get a little bit of a leeway, but Kyle Shanahan will not. At some point, you have to win. You done paid this person, you done paid that person. You're getting ready to reset the market for Fred Warner. You got to start winning. You have to win. Better yet, let me see if I can find the schedule right now for the 49ers. just to tell you how easy their schedule is. And we're back, folks. So I was finally able to find their schedule. So here it is. Their first opponent, Seattle. Then after that, they face the Saints, the Cardinals, Jacksonville, the Rams, which is probably going to be a tough game. The Buccaneers, that's going to be a tough game. Atlanta, a little bit rocky about that. Houston, and somewhat of an even matchup. New York, the Rams again, the Cardinals, the Panthers, the Browns. They have a Week 14 bye. What are we talking about? They have positioned themselves to potentially go on a crazy run. Everybody knows the later that you have a bye week, the more refreshed you will be ready when it comes to the postseason. And then after the bye week, you face Tennessee, which is still in shambles, Indianapolis, which we don't even know what's going to happen with the quarterback position, Chicago, and then you end it with Seattle. That's somewhat of an easy schedule to me. Out of all the teams that I just listed, the Saints, you could definitely win. The Buccaneers, that might be a little bit rocky. Jacksonville, I definitely think they can beat Jacksonville. I definitely think they can beat Atlanta. Carolina for sure. Tennessee for sure. There's a few teams on here that they can definitely crush. And there are some other teams where it's going to be somewhat of a fight. Chicago is going to be a fight. Tampa Bay is probably going to be a fight. Los Angeles has always a fight. Not just because they're division rivals, but just because Sean McVay has always had Kyle Shanahan's number. But that's not the point, okay? The point is this. You have to win. I'm happy for Brock Purdy, but the pressure is now on the entire team as a whole to win. If you guys do not win, there's going to be some serious questions that are going to have to be asked when it comes to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch and this entire team as a whole. Because you guys are giving out these big old contracts and you guys aren't winning. It's one thing if you're winning, but you're not winning. You've been to the Super Bowl multiple times and you still haven't won. What are we doing? Let's get into this whole Chris Olave situation. So according to Adam Crowley, who was a part of 93.7 The Fan, a local Pittsburgh radio show, he was told by someone within the Steelers organization, Chris Olave. That's the text message that he got, which was Chris Olave. And so he tweets out and he basically says, the Steelers are interested in Chris Olave. They made a few calls. And then shortly afterwards, somebody else says the Steelers are trying to trade for Chris Olave. So instantly when this happens, all of Steelers Twitter goes crazy. I'm talking about everybody has mock-ups of Chris Olave in the Steelers uniform. They got a whole bunch of highlight clips of Chris Olave. They're just doing the whole thing with Chris Olave. If I'm not mistaken, there's probably a Chris Olave Berg account right now. That's how crazy it was. And then, come to find out, according to Nick Farabaugh, he clarified and said that it was just a routine call. It was nothing significant. It was nothing serious. Nothing is in the works right now. It was just a routine call just to see of his availability and how much would it cost to make that transaction. Now, something that is worth noting is that the Saints did pick up Chris Olave's fifth-year option. Now, according to SpotRack, Chris Olave's market value is 3 years, $53.4 million, which is $17.8 million a year. Me personally, I feel like that's very low. I feel like you could probably pay him between 23 to maybe 28 a year personally. Now, the thing is this. On one hand, I respect the move that the Steelers are making, which is they're doing their due diligence. They're calling around just to see the availability of all the receivers. However, I don't think the Saints are willing to make that move right now just because, for one, Chris Olave is the number one receiver on the team. Two, we don't know exactly what's going to happen moving forward when it comes to the quarterback position. And three, I just don't feel like the Saints are in a position where they just want to say, screw it. We're just focusing on next year. Now, maybe by the middle part of the season, we may have something a little bit different. But the fact of the matter is, right now, there's no need to make a move. I know a lot of Steelers fans are probably thinking, well, we shouldn't make this move. We need to make this move. We need to do it now. We need a number two receiver. I understand that. I get that. But the thing is this. if you make a trade for someone like a Chris Olave, you're going to have to pay him. This isn't something where it's a 2-year rental, then you can get rid of him. No, he's going to want to talk about money. And so if you think you're going to be able to get him for a discount, you are sadly mistaken. The same amount of money that you would have probably had to pay George Pickens, you may have to pay a little bit more for Chris Olave. I'm just being completely honest here. I think the real question that we really need to ask is, are the Steelers looking for more of a long-term wide receiver 2 choice, or are they looking for something that's more short-term? Because if they're looking for something long-term, then this is a great move. But if you're looking for something short-term, then this probably isn't the best move for you, and you should probably go after someone maybe like Amari Cooper or DJ Chark, or you could probably pick up anybody that's cut when it gets down to the point where everybody has to cut down their rosters to be, in compliance and whatnot. You could take that route. There's a few different ways that you could go about this. But I appreciate that Omar Khan is reaching out and testing the waters and seeing what exactly will it take for me to make a major transaction. Now, here's the thing. I think a lot of teams are very weary when it comes to making trades, when it comes to receivers, simply because they all saw what happened with the whole Chase Claypool situation. And so I feel like they don't want to get swindled again. And so when we look at Chris Olave, I feel like giving up maybe a conditional third that can turn into a second-round pick, I feel like that's good. Or you could just give him a second-round pick just straight up. Either way, I think this is somewhat of a seed planting move. And let me explain why. You're testing the waters now just to see where things are. We all know that this could possibly change within the next few weeks, probably by minicamp and then training camp and then maybe even into the regular season. Things could change because let's be real here. The Saints are somewhat going through a tough rebuild again. And so there is a good chance that some people are going to want out. I wouldn't be surprised if Chris Olave is one of those people. So on one hand, this is a good move, but on the other hand, I'm a little bit concerned about it because why would you make a significant move like this when you don't know who your quarterback is going to be? And granted, I understand it's a very sensitive subject, and I understand that a lot of people are hearing different things, quote unquote. People are saying, well, I believe that Aaron Rodgers will make his decision by the end of the week. Or I believe Aaron Rodgers will do this and do that. Or, oh, I believe Aaron Rodgers will be ready by the end of the month. Or I think he's going to show up for a minicamp. Or I think he's going to show up for a training camp. The fact of the matter is, it's time to move on. Because the longer that you wait, the worse it's going to look for the team. Because right now, this is when you need your quarterback to be in place so that he can be familiar with the offense, he can be familiar with his teammates, and everybody else is familiar with his cadences. Instead of waiting for a 41-year-old to make a decision on if he wants to play football or not. Granted, I understand he's going through something that is apparently very serious and whatnot. I understand that. But at the end of the day, all of this could have been neglected had you just did one thing correctly. And you know what that was? Just sign Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. I would have just done that because then guess what? You wouldn't have to worry about none of this. You wouldn't have to worry about, is he coming? Is he coming? Is he going? Is he going? What exactly is he doing? You wouldn't have a whole bunch of people speculating on, well, I have inside information with people that are connected to, his inner circle that believes that this is going to happen or that's going to happen. You wouldn't have to deal with all that. Granted, I understand the article that came out about Russell Wilson not agreeing with Arthur Smith. I understand it was so dreadful and it was so, it was just so bad. It was so horrible and it made people feel some type of way. But guess what? It's true. It's 100% true. Russell Wilson is an established veteran quarterback who will potentially possibly be a Hall of Famer. Why shouldn't he not have the right to make certain calls to the plate? I'm sorry, but a quarterback's view of what he sees on the field is different from what an offensive coordinator's view is. Because guess what? The offensive coordinator isn't on the field. He isn't under center. He doesn't see something different. So if Russell Wilson changes the call and it actually benefits the team, then who really cares? But instead, everybody was upset with how things ended. Oh well. If you guys are that butthurt about this, go in the locker room, turn off the lights, get some gloves, hash it out. Y'all get ice packs later. Because at this point, the message in the Steelers organization, the foundation of the Steelers, is crumbling in front of our eyes, ladies and gentlemen. Because we have someone in a Mike Tomlin who does not want to do what's best for the team. He wants to do what's best for his ego. He wants his ego stroked every single season. I'm sorry here, folks. Aaron Rodgers, in the last 3 years, has not shown me anything that would make me want to stay and wait this long. Now, if this was the Aaron Rodgers of old, oh, by all means, take as much time as you need, because you know why, and I said this before in previous episodes. When Aaron Rodgers steps on that field, you already know that you have either the best quarterback or the second best quarterback on that field. You don't have that anymore with this version of Aaron Rodgers. So why are we waiting this long? It is time to move forward. If you're going to make a move for Kirk Cousins, pick up the phone and call the Falcons and see exactly what the asking price is. If not, call Carson Wentz. Or better yet, just run it with Mason Rudolph. It's not going to hurt you. Because what sense does it make in getting someone like a Mason Rudolph, and then you're waiting all the way towards the point of no return for somebody who you don't even know if he's really committed to football or not? It doesn't make any sense. Aaron Rodgers is not going to move the needle that much. If we're all banking on next year to be the year that we take the quote-unquote big swing for quarterback, then why don't we just use this year to just say, hey, we're going to lower our expectations and we're just going to see how the season goes. There's no need to say, oh, we're trying to compete for a championship this year. No, we're not. This roster is not a championship roster on offense or defense. Sure, you have championship caliber players, yes, but you do not have a championship caliber roster. This roster can't compete with the Chiefs. This roster can't compete against the Ravens. This roster cannot compete against the Bills. This roster can't even compete against the Eagles. So what makes you think that we are a championship team? If you are a championship team, you know what that means? That means that you are able to go up against someone like the Chiefs, like the Eagles, like the Bills, like the Ravens, like any of the other Super Bowl caliber teams. What happened last year? You got crushed. You got crushed by the Eagles. You got crushed by the Chiefs. All the teams that you should have been beating, you couldn't beat, and you still cannot beat. But you'll beat up on all the other teams who are at a crossroads or still trying to, get their act together. It's time that we be serious about winning. And if you are not serious about winning, give it to somebody else. TJ Watt still has not won a playoff game. As great as TJ Watt is, he should have been able to win at least one playoff game. Am I wrong? Because at this point, if Aaron Rodgers does not sign by OTAs, it's time we have that conversation, folks. It's time we move forward. It's time that we do something different. It's time to admit that we waited too long. We did the exact same thing last year for Brandon Ayuk, thinking that Brandon Ayuk was going to be a part of the team. And at the very last minute, guess what he did? I'm going to stay with the 49ers. What are we doing? See, I could go on almost a 30 or 45 minute rant just off of the Steelers and the moves that they're making. But I don't think nobody really wants to listen to that. So I'm just going to continue to move forward. But I will say this, and this will just be the last question that I ask. Are we focused on the present or are we focused on the future? You answer that question for me on our Instagram, football_junkies pod. You can answer that for me on X, Follow me there, GM Kale. You can answer that for me on TikTok, Football Junkies Pod. You could also answer that for me on the YouTube as well, Football Junkies Pod. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, please. I want to have a healthy debate about this. But let's move forward to some other things that are a little bit more pressing, and that is this Trey Hendrickson situation. So we did catch word, if I'm not mistaken, last episode or the episode before that, where Trey Hendrickson puts out this statement. And so now we finally understand why he put out that statement. So apparently he was informed by head coach Zach Taylor that missing mandatory minicamp will result in fines. And this is what Trey Hendrickson says. And I quote, "We've tried to keep it as least amount as personal as possible, but at some point in this process, it becomes personal. Being sent 30 days before mandatory minicamp, or how many ever days it is, that if I don't show up, I will be fined, alludes to the fact that something won't get done in that time frame." End quote. He also puts out another statement that also says, and I quote, "And when there's a lack of communication in any relationship, if it's business or personal relationship, lack of communication leads to animosity. And that leaves my narrative only to me with no clear direction." End quote. At this point, this is bad business for the Bengals. And if you are not willing to pay Trey Hendrickson the money that he so deserves, then move on from him. Trade him away. Because you just crossing your arms and just saying, "Oh yeah, we're not going to pay you that. Oh yeah, we're not going to pay you that." It's not going to solve anything. If you're not going to pay him, just move on. Who cares? Use that draft capital to try to get somebody else that can play the role of Trey Hendrickson. Because right now, all you're doing is just wasting each other's time. There is a team right now, I guarantee you, that will give up possibly a first-round pick for Trey Hendrickson. Or maybe a conditional second that can turn into a first-round pick. I'm just being honest here. The Eagles would be interested in him. The Lions will be interested in him. I would guarantee you the 49ers would be interested in getting someone like a Trey Hendrickson. Because right now, his market value, according to Spot Rack, is 2 years, $62.9 million, which is $31.5 million a year. Now, do I think he could probably get a little bit more than that? Yes. Just because Trey Hendrickson has been one of the more consistent pass rushers in the last few years. Not to mention, he's been a Defensive Player of the Year finalist the last 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. So it's just time for you to go in a different direction. But at the same time, I'm not surprised that the Bengals are doing this, because why? The Bengals have always had a reputation of just doing bad business. You can go as far back as, I don't know, the 80s. They're doing bad business. They've always done bad business. So just move on. If you're not going to pay him, recoup that draft capital and use it for another position. But just know this. If you move on from Trey Hendrickson, your defense is going to be atrocious. Or better yet, you just won't have a defense at all. Now let's get into the Elgton Jenkins situation. So this one's a little bit more complicated, and I'm going to try to see if I can break it down as best as possible. So apparently, Elgton Jenkins is not participating in off-season workouts because he's looking for a new deal. Okay, cool. But here's the problem. Apparently, they want him to transition to center. So these are just some of the junky nuggets that I was able to find after reading a few different articles. So Elgton Jenkins doesn't have a problem moving to center, but would like to be financially compensated when making that transition. Now here's the thing. He has 2 years left of a 4-year, $68 million deal that he signed in 2022. The deal was designed to pay him as a guard while making him quote-unquote competitive if he moved to tackle, because Elgton Jenkins coming into the league had positional flexibility. So it was only right for the Packers to basically pay him the money that they paid him, because they realized that they could use him at tackle, guard, or anywhere else. The highest paid centers right now, Creed Humphrey at $18 million. Then you have Eric McCoy at $12 million. And then I think there's one more, I think, that recently just got paid as well. So you have a pretty decent market when it comes to centers. Now the question is, how much money is Elgton Jenkins looking for? because currently he is scheduled to make 12.8 million this year and then 20 next year. Here's the thing with this. When you have someone like an Elgton Jenkins who has positional flexibility and actually plays very well, things could get a little bit tricky. Because if you move him to center, there's a possibility that you may have to reset the center market. Now, granted, the center market is only at 18 right now. Could you get him maybe to 19, maybe 19.5? Do you want to take it up to 20? Because right now, Elgton Jenkins has probably been one of your better offensive linemen in the last few years. And so I think it's only right that you possibly compensate him for that. Now, here's the thing. Are you going to have to basically scrap the last 2 years of his current deal and then just give him a whole new deal? Or are you going to have to move some money around? Because this is a little bit complicated. Now, do I think this is going to be elevated even further? No. I do believe some resolution will come fairly soon. But the question is, what is it going to be? Because if you're having to move him at center, it might cost you a little bit more. Just saying. Now let's get into something that's a little bit more controversial, and that is the NFL revamping the accelerator program. So here's the background behind this program. So it started in 2022 after the league believed that owners were passing over qualified individuals of color. And so when we look at this program, it really hasn't been super successful. And let me explain why. Out of all the people that have been in this program, there's only been 2 people that have had success. Rand Carthorne, who was the former Titans GM and was fired last year, and then Aaron Glenn, who is now the Jets head coach. That's not good. If only 2 people out of probably 1,000 or more who actually try to go through this program to actually have a better shot at possibly getting hired or possibly getting an elevator role within an organization, if nobody is getting it but just 2 people, that's not good numbers. And so here is the statement that was put out by the league concerning the whole accelerator program. And I quote, "We believe diversity of thought and background is essential to our success, and it's reflected in these policies, programs, and partnerships that help us attract, develop, and retain top talent at every level on and off the field. We recently executed a number of programs, including the General Manager Accelerator at the December League meeting in Dallas, a 3-day candidate development program at Combine, and the 9th Annual Women's Forum, where 40 women advance career opportunities in football. Every offseason, we take a step back to reflect on the positives and areas for improvement of our programs and assess ways to make them more impactful. This year, we assessed and identified additional opportunities with the accelerator, including combining the coaching and front office programs to ensure the accelerator continues to be as impactful as possible. We have decided to hold the next iteration of the accelerator in May 2026. This will allow us to reimagine the program, reflecting on the feedback and engaging with stakeholders so we can ensure a successful program in the future. We're steadfast in our commitment to strengthening our talent pipeline and create an environment that reflects the diversity of our fan base. The NFL strives to be a unifying force, and we are confident the next evolution of our efforts will take us one step closer to that goal," end quote. Now, with all the controversy going on with DEI and whatnot, there is a good chance they may have probably done this because they may have gotten word that they will probably be targeted with all the programs that they have in place. But here's the thing though, folks. Everyone needs to just admit it. A lot of these programs aren't successful. A lot of these programs are not giving minorities of color a true legitimate chance of being a GM, of being a high-level scout, of being a head coach or offensive or defensive coordinator. We all know that their leashes are much shorter than those of white counterparts. And this is me not trying to play the race card. This is me not trying to be black and white and whatnot. But let's just call it for what it is. We have seen a lot of qualified candidates of color be overlooked for white counterparts. And mind you, a lot of times the white counterparts are not as qualified or have not been qualified in recent years to be eligible for this position. But they still get it because they may have connections with this person, that person within the front office. But the fact of the matter is, these programs are not doing enough to really show that, hey, we are serious about promoting minorities of color and giving them a legitimate chance of being the next great GM, the next great head coach, the next great offensive or defensive coordinator or whatever. Even when it comes to the Rooney Rule, everybody knows that all 32 teams are going to make sure that they're Rooney Rule compliant by doing what? Make sure that they get rid of all the minority candidates first and then go after the real candidates that they really want to go after. We see it every single year. There are some people that I feel like that should be in the league right now, and they're not for whatever reason. Eric Bieniemy, I feel like he should have at least tried to be a head coach by now. Is there something behind closed doors that people know that is preventing him from being a head coach? It's a possibility. But why is it that a lot of teams make sure that they're Rooney Rule compliant first before making their decision? And I understand some people want to say, well, it's a football decision, or it's tied to this, or it's tied to that. I don't believe you one bit. Because a lot of times the minority candidates are twice or maybe 3 times as qualified as their white counterparts. Brian Flores by now should have been a head coach again. And granted, I understand that whole experience with Tua in Miami wasn't the best. I understand that. But this is a league of second chances. So if this is a league of second chances, and we all saw what Brian Flores did with that Vikings defense last season, there is no reason under the sun why he has not gotten another head coaching job. Same thing with Leslie Frazier. I can continue to go down the list of people that should have gotten a chance to be a head coach or coordinator or GM or whatever the case may be. There are a lot of people that deserve chances, that have worked hard and continue to prove the naysayers that they belong wherever they belong. But you have people like Matt Eberflus who continue to get chance after chance after chance. For what? He was horrible as a head coach, and he still was able to get another job before a lot of other people were able to. That's why you saw a lot of people that were candidates go back into the college realm. Because why? There wasn't no legitimate chances. Same thing for Byron Leftwich. Byron Leftwich should be somebody's offensive coordinator this year or somebody's quarterback coach. Pep Hamilton is a sleeper of somebody that not a lot of people talk about. Pep Hamilton was the reason why Justin Herbert had that great rookie year. He was the reason why Davis Mills did what he did before they got C.J. Stroud. People don't even realize that. So if we really want to be serious about giving people of color a chance, then we have to put more pressure on the owners to be more open to it. Now, there are some teams that are more open to process, I would say. But you also have others who continue to show year after year that they're really not. Same thing with the Patriots. Gerard Mayo should have had a chance. Gerard Mayo did not get a legitimate chance. And he basically got fired because they didn't get the first pick. It still doesn't matter because why? You still had a really high pick. Same thing as Rand Carthorne. Rand Carthorne positioned this team in order to get their first pick. It wasn't because of Mike Borgonzi. No disrespect to him. No, it's because of Rand Carthorne. Rand Carthorne was trying to build this team. But there's only so much that you can do when you guys expect these GMs and whatnot to rebuild this team overnight. It doesn't work like that if you don't have everything in place. It doesn't work if you don't have a solid franchise quarterback. It doesn't work if you don't have a solid offensive line, weapons, coaches, all those different things and more. It doesn't work like that. But nobody wants to give people a legitimate chance. Instead, we'll give you 2 years, and after those 2 years, you're gone. The only minority head coach that has been able to coach as long as he's had is Mike Tomlin. That is sad, folks. According to an ESPN article that came out this year, The Associated Press surveyed more than 65 black players from 25 teams about the lack of black head coaches throughout the entire league. 36% of them were discouraged or disappointed by the number of black coaches. Miami's linebacker Anthony Walker Jr. said, and I quote, "Until you see more coaches, we're all going to look at it the same way. There aren't enough black coaches," end quote. But let's go a little bit deeper than this, okay? Over 25 seasons, from 2000 to 2024, an Associated Press count shows 31 of the 173 new NFL head coaches, 18% of them were black. In that same span, 8 of the 19 head coaches, which is 42%, were fired after the first full season. Let's just call it for what it is. The NFL has a major problem when it comes to hiring minority coaches, GMs, wherever. They have a major problem, and it feels like at times it's never going to get resolved. Even when it came with the recent interview process with the Jaguars, some red flags should have been waving. Somebody should have intervened with that process, because that's not right. And granted, if you're looking at this from, oh, this person is more qualified than that person, whatever. But we can clearly see that black coaches have a shorter leash than everybody else. We see that black offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, quarterback coaches, running back coaches, tight end coaches, O-line coaches, GMs, assistant GMs, all of them have a shorter leash than their white counterparts. And I am not trying to be that person that wants to play the race game. I do not want to do that, and I do not like doing that. But what we need to address here, folks, is that this accelerator program needs to have serious changes in order to improve the likelihood of people being able to get these positions. Because it shouldn't just be Rand Carthorne and Aaron Glenn. We should be seeing at least 15 to 20 new hires each and every single offseason. And they don't have to be head coaches. It can be offensive coordinators. It can be defensive coordinators. It could be assistant GMs. It could be whomever. But there needs to be an effort in place to do it. And I understand that the Rooney Rule is in place. And I understand that the Rooney Rule was intended to increase the likelihood of minorities to get a chance. But they will never get a chance. It's always going to be an uphill battle every single time. Because you know why? Because it's who you know. It's never about, well, I'm a little bit more qualified because I worked with this position, or I'm a little bit more qualified because I led this team here or there. No, it's who you know at the end of the day. It's a damn shame, folks. It's a damn shame. Now let's talk about this schedule, because this schedule is it's great for some and it's horrible for others, okay? Because when we look at the strength of schedule for all the teams with the easiest schedules, the 49ers, the Patriots, Saints, Falcons, and Bills. The teams with the hardest schedules, Giants, Browns, Lions, Eagles, Vikings. Let's just look at some of these schedules, okay? So for the Giants, they have to go up against the Commanders first, the Cowboys, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Saints, the Eagles again, the Broncos, the Eagles again. Did I say the Eagles twice? I did say the Eagles twice. Okay. The 49ers, the Bears, the Packers, the Lions, the Patriots. Then they have their Week 14 bye. The Commanders, the Vikings, the Raiders, and then the Cowboys. That's a gauntlet. Man, oh man, that is a gauntlet. Now, granted, it's great if they have a late bye, because then they're able to at least get themselves somewhat healthy to maybe make a late playoff run. But geez Louise, man, just to get to that point is difficult. Week 8, the Eagles. Week 9, the 49ers. Week 10, the Bears. Week 11, the Packers. This is not looking good, folks. Now, when we look at the Eagles, you got the Cowboys, the Chiefs, the Rams, the Buccaneers, the Broncos, the Giants, the Vikings, the Giants again. Then you have your bye week, which is in week 9, which really isn't that good. Week 10, you got the Packers, the Lions, the Cowboys, the Bears, the Chargers, the Raiders, the Commanders, the Bills, and then the Commanders again. That is the fourth hardest schedule in the entire league. Now, some of these Sunday night football games, it's a little bit of a hit or miss. Just being honest here. Who really wants to see the Falcons and the Vikings on Sunday night? Raise your hand. Better yet, don't raise your hand. Chiefs and Giants, that could be something. Packers and Cowboys, that actually might be pretty good. Patriots and Bills are definitely going to be good. Bills and Ravens are going to be really good. There's a few good sleepers for the Sunday night football lineup. And then when we look at the Amazon Thursday night games, which, man, these are tough. These are really, really, really tough. Even the Christmas night game, I feel like that's going to be a really good game. The Black Friday game, I think that's going to be really good as well. And then Thanksgiving, of course, we all know the Cowboys are going to be playing. But Chiefs and Cowboys, that might actually be good. I might have to skip the Thanksgiving meal and just watch football. I don't know. And then you got the Packers and Lions, Bengals and Ravens, Bears and Eagles. Folks, this is going to be a really tough year for a lot of teams. But at the same time, this shows you that a lot of teams are starting to become more competitive, which I think is better for the league as a whole, because you just don't want a whole bunch of teams that are just subpar. You want some teams that are really competitive. You want some matchups that are going to be memorable. And so I think a lot of these schedules are going to be really good, especially when it comes to that second half of the season. Oh, man, you won't be able to miss a game just because of how great these games are going to be. Just, oh my God, cannot wait for the season. I am ready for the season to start now if it was possible, but we can't. We still have to wait a few more months. But let's get into the grades. So, NFC North, you already know, Lions, Vikings, Bears, and Packers. So let's start with the Lions. So their positions of need: defensive back, edge, interior offensive line, defensive line. So first round, they got Tyleik Williams. Second round, they got Tate Ratledge. Third round, they got Isaac Tesla. Fifth round, they got Miles Frazier. Sixth round, they got Ahmed Hassanein. Seventh round, they got Dan Jackson, as well as Dominic Levet. Now, when we look at their team stats and we break it down by offense and defense, they have the second-ranked offense, which averaged 30.5 points per game, 424.9 yards per game, 6.8 yards per play, and 62 touchdowns. When we break this down into passing and running, they were the second passing offense in the league and averaged 263.2 passing yards per game, 7.7 passing yards per play, and 39 passing touchdowns. Whereas when you look at the rushing side, okay, they had the sixth rushing offense that averaged 146.4 rushing yards per game, 4.7 rushing yards per play, 29 rushing touchdowns, and 68 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. We all know that the Lions really didn't have to make a lot of investments into the offense. And all the investments that were made into the offense were mainly just to show up the depth pieces. It wasn't necessarily to address a starter caliber role. When we shift things over to the defense, though, that's where things get a little bit weird. So they were the 20th ranked defense, which averaged 20.1 points allowed per game, 342.4 yards allowed per game, 5.7 yards per play allowed, 36 touchdowns allowed, and had a 35.2 quarterback pressure percentage rate. Now, when we look at their passing defense, they were 30th in the league, and they averaged 244 passing yards allowed per game, 6.4 passing yards allowed per play, and 18 passing touchdowns allowed. When we look at the run defense, they were 5th in the league and allowed 18 rushing touchdowns, 98.4 rushing yards per game, 4.5 rushing yards per play, and allowed 46 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. Here's the thing with the Lions. So you really can't give them an A. I would venture to say probably a B plus. And this is why. For starters, Tyleik Williams, to some you could probably say is a reach. To me, I probably would say really isn't that high of a reach because they were low enough in the draft where they wasn't going to be able to get a Derrick Harmon or any of those other high caliber defensive linemen. And so getting someone like a Tyreek Williams, it's not necessarily bad. It's somewhat good just because of the positioning. Now, if they were, I don't know, in the teens or like high 20s and you take Tyreek Williams, it may be a little bit of a head scratcher. But because you're so low in the draft, I can understand it. Because Tyreek Williams, by some people's accounts, was either a late first round pick, early second round pick, or early second round pick, late third round pick, depending on who you listen to. But when we look at everything else, I think they had a pretty solid draft. Tate Ratledge, that's a really good pick. Isaac Tesla, that's a really good pick. Miles Frazier, so you're doubling down at interior offensive line. Edge, you're addressing that, which you really do need. Wide receiver, maybe it was a want over need. I think it was probably just somebody that they really loved his intangibles and they feel like they couldn't pass over, so they just got him. So overall, my takeaway from the Lions is it's a B plus draft. It's not a draft where it's just oohs and ahs. It's a really solid foundational type of draft, which they needed to address the defensive line significantly because it took a beating late last season. That was one of the factors that we didn't make such a deep playoff run because that defensive line took a beating. You had Hutch that was out of the season. You had a lot of the defensive linemen that were there who were also out for the rest of the season. You had some that were unable to be ready for the next game, so they just had to use people from the practice squad and whatnot in order to hold things together. So I can understand why they made that investment in getting Tyreek Williams. Now, when we shift things over to the Vikings, okay, they didn't have a lot of draft picks. They didn't have a lot of draft needs. So most likely, I'm probably going to give them a B plus as well. But let's go a little bit deeper in this. So their positions of need: corner, inside linebacker, safety, running back, defensive line, interior offensive line, and tight end. With that being said, with their first pick, they had Donovan Jackson. Their third round pick, they had Ty Felton. Their fifth round pick, they had Tyrion Ingram Dawkins. And their sixth round pick, they had Gavin Bartholomew. Overall, this was a very solid draft. And the reason why I say that is because you address interior offensive line with Donovan Jackson, which was really good. You address wide receiver depth with Ty Felton, which was great. You also address edge as well as tight end, which was also really good as well. So overall, this was a B plus type of draft. Sure, you probably didn't have a whole lot of draft picks, but you were hitting well in free agency, so that minimized the needs as much. So all in all, I would say this was a B plus. Now, could you have dressed maybe cornerback or safety? Sure. But all in all, I think they did a really solid job. Again, the reason why I'm not giving a lot of teams very high grades is because a lot of these teams really didn't have to do as much in the draft because they made all of their decisions in free agency. So they didn't have to be as aggressive as what they needed to be. I feel like at best, there are probably maybe less than 10 teams that I will probably give an A plus grade on. Outside of that, everybody probably get a B minus to a B plus. Because why? It's a meat and potatoes type of draft. This wasn't a draft where it was spectacular and, it was just box office. No, this was more of a draft, as I call it, a meat and potatoes. And sometimes you need a meat and potatoes type of draft. That is the only way that you can appreciate those blockbuster type of draft classes. Meat and potato draft classes are what makes up championship caliber teams. It's not always flashes and oohs and ahs. A lot of times it's meat and potatoes. Remember that. When we look at their team stats, they were the 12th ranked offense, which averaged 25.4 points per game, 346.9 yards per game, and 5.6 yards per play, as well as 44 touchdowns. Now, when we break this down a little bit more, they had the 6th passing offense, which averaged 237.8 passing yards per game, 6.8 passing yards per play, and 35 passing touchdowns. Let's keep on going. They had the 20th rushing offense, which averaged 109.1 rushing yards per game, 4.1 rushing yards per play, 9 rushing touchdowns, and 49 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. When we look over to the defensive side, however, they had the 16th ranked defense, which averaged 19.5 points per game, 335.4 yards per game, 5.3 yards per play, and 36 touchdowns, as well as having a 35.7 quarterback pressure percentage. When we look at their passing defense, they were 28th in the league in allowing 242 passing yards per game, 6 passing yards per play, and 24 passing touchdowns. When we shift things over to the run defense, they were second in the league. They allowed 12 rushing touchdowns, 93.4 rushing yards per game, 4.1 rushing yards per play, and allowed 39 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. So all in all, they were in a really good spot. They re-signed a lot of their free agent players. They made additions with Javon Hargrave as well as Jonathan Allen, so the defensive line got stronger. They made a lot of moves in free agency. So they were good. They just had to just patch up a few different things, which really isn't that bad. Getting someone like a Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, I think that was a good pick. Ty Felton, great pick, as I said before. Donovan Jackson, even Gavin Bartholomew. I think that's a really good of a sleeper pick because why? Having him along with TJ Hawkinson is great because I think they've been looking for another productive tight end. So having Gavin would definitely help out as well. So again, I'll give them a B+. I'm not going to be somebody that's going to say, oh yeah, A+, A+ for sure. Oh yeah, A+. No, B+. Let's go over to the Bears. So their positions of need: defensive line, running back, edge, wide receiver, interior offensive line. So their first round, Colston Loveland. Their second round, they got Luther Burden, Ozzie Tripolo, and Shamar Turner. Their fourth round, they got Ruben Hypolitz. I think I just butchered your last name. I'm so sorry. The fifth round, they got Za Frazier. The sixth round, they got Luke Newman. The seventh round, they got Kyle Monagai. I was finally able to pronounce his last name. Now, when we look at the team stats, they were the 32nd ranked offense that averaged 18.2 points per game, 283.5 yards per game, 4.5 yards per play, and 33 touchdowns. When we look over their passing offense, they were 31st in the league and averaged 181.5 passing yards per game, 4.9 passing yards per play, and 20 passing touchdowns. When we shift things over to their rushing offense, they were 25th in the league and averaged 102 rushing yards per game, 4 rushing yards per play, 13 rushing touchdowns, 42 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. When we look over the defense, however, they were 27th in the league and averaged 21.8 points per game, 354.2 yards per game, 5.9 yards per play, 37 touchdowns, and had a quarterback pressure percentage of 36.5. Shift things over to the passing defense. Atrocious. 31st in the league. They averaged 217.9 passing yards per game, 6.8 passing yards per play, and 17 passing touchdowns. They were 28th in run defense and allowed 20 rushing touchdowns, 136.3 rushing yards per game, 4.8 rushing yards per play, and allowed 64 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. All in all, this was a dynamic draft class. For this to be Ben Johnson's first year, great. I would venture to say this is probably an A+ draft class. And let me explain why. For one, you get Colston Loveland, which is a great weapon. You get Luther Burden as well. So you have two really great weapons. Because technically speaking, Luther Burden was supposed to be a first round pick. But I think the reason why he fell was because of the whole attitude issues and that he took off plays or whatever, something crazy. But then you also address tackle with Ozzie Tripolo as well as defensive tackle with Shamar Turner, which is great. You get Za Frazier in a really good corner. You get Luke Newman, who is a pretty good tackle that I think he can develop over time. All in all, this was a really great draft class. You address tight end, which is great because now you have Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet. You now have Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, and Luther Burden. You have Ozzie Tripolo. You have Shamar Turner. You have Za Frazier, Luke Newman. You have it all. I could venture to say this is probably a B+, maybe an A. You know what? Bump it. I'll give him an A. Now, I already know there's probably a lot of fans that are probably saying, well, that's not fair. That's not fair. Listen, for this to be Ben Johnson's first draft, started off really well. You get Colston Loveland and you get Luther Burden. What? Caleb Williams, there is no excuse for you. Which, speaking of which, we will be talking about that whole situation in the next episode. You thought I forgot, but I'm not going to. We will be addressing that in the next episode for sure, because I have to go a little bit deeper into what exactly occurred with that entire situation, because it really doesn't make any sense, and some people are leaving out details, but I really need to know exactly what happened. So stay tuned for that. But back to this whole draft. Great. Absolutely 100% great. Just saying. So let's end things with the Packers. So their positions of need were cornerback, wide receiver, interior offensive line, and edge. So they drafted Matthew Golden, Anthony Belton, Savion Williams, Baron Sorrell, Colin Oliver, Warren Brinson, Micah Robinson, and John Williams. Yeah, Micah Robinson. I knew I was pronouncing that right. And when we look at their team stats, okay, they were the 5th ranked offense, and they averaged 27.1 points per game, 370.8 yards per game, 6.1 yards per play, and 51 touchdowns. When we break this down a little bit more, they had the 12th passing offense, which averaged 223.9 passing yards per game, 7.6 passing yards per play, and 28 passing touchdowns. When we shift things over to the rushing offense, they were 5th in the league, and they averaged 146.8 rushing yards per game, 4.7 rushing yards per play, 23 rushing touchdowns, and 70 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. When we shift things over to the defense, however, they were 5th in the league, allowed 19.9 points per game, 314.5 yards per game, 5.2 yards per play, 36 touchdowns, and had a quarterback pressure percentage of 32.3. They had the 13th passing defense, which allowed 215.2 passing yards per game, 6 passing yards per play, and 23 passing touchdowns. When we shift things over to the run defense, however, they were 7th in the league, and they allowed 13 rushing touchdowns, 99.4 rushing yards per game, 4 rushing yards per play, and allowed 46 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. Overall, this was a really solid draft class for the Packers. For them to get Matthew Golden and Savion Williams, I think is great. And the reason why I say that is because you have a Swiss Army knife in Savion Williams who could potentially be the next Cordell Patterson, as well as a burner in Matthew Golden who ran a 4.2, which was honestly great. You have Anthony Belton in the second round, which we all know that the Packers have had a lot of success in developing second and third and fourth round offensive linemen, so I'm not surprised. And then you get a corner in Micah Robinson. You also get another tackle. You get another edge rusher. All in all, they had a very solid draft class. I cannot complain about their draft class at all. I feel like they addressed a lot of positions of need, and I think they did fairly well. Now, the question is this. Do we give them a B+? You know what? I will let you guys make that decision for me. Let me know in the comments on the YouTube, Football Junkies Pod, on if the Packers should get a B+ or A. And please give me a good enough answer. If you do, then I will change my grade. But as of right now, I think I probably would give them... Let's think. I'll give them a B+. Who cares? I'll give them a B+. But just let me know in the comments, okay? Please. I would definitely appreciate that. But I'm going to end this episode here. If you guys like what you are listening, please make sure you guys download the episodes. Leave a 5-star review on anywhere and everywhere that you listen to podcasts. We are available on Apple Podcasts. We're available on Spotify, RSS feed, as well as a slew of other podcasting platforms. Now, if you want access to those said platforms, all you have to do is go on our RSS feed page and you will have access to all the other platforms that we are available on when it comes to podcasting. Now, for my YouTube people, Football Junkies Pod. When you go on our YouTube page, in our bio, we have a link to the link tree. When you click on that link tree, it will take you to anywhere and everywhere that we have Football Junkies content. We are also available on TikTok as well. Football Junkies Pod. Clips. I know. Most likely, I'm probably going to have to go on a break fairly soon because, for one, I need to start working on a lot of clips, and two, I need to start working on planning my exam for one of my certifications. So Yeah, there's that. But back to everything else. For my Instagram people, football_junkies pod. Okay, football_junkies pod. Junkies pod is not what? It is together, not spaced. It is together, not spaced. You can follow me on X and on Blue Sky, same handle, GM Kale. All right, GM Kale, GM, and then Kale, Kaile. As always, I hope I gave you guys the fix that you guys need. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for listening. For all my football junkies, I appreciate you guys. We are almost hitting 80 episodes, folks. 80 episodes. I would not be surprised by the time I am done editing this episode, we won't have something else to talk about. Maybe Fred Warner inks his deal. Maybe he resets the market. Maybe a certain quarterback makes his decision. Maybe a team that doesn't have a quarterback, quote unquote, finally makes up a decision, probably wakes up and realizes they should probably just move on. I don't know. But guess what? Stay tuned, because guess what? We got some things that are coming on the way. I have caught word that there may be some moves that are going to be made fairly soon. Stay tuned, but just know your GM, who currently is not on the team right now, but don't you worry about it, will be there to cover this all. So guess what? This is your GM Kel signing out. Peace and love. Later. Breaking news. I told you so. I told you it was going to happen. And guess what? It happened, folks. That's right. Fred Warner gets the bag. He resets the linebacker market again, folks. That is right. I called it once again. It happens either when I'm editing, when I'm recording, or when I'm done. I got more work to do, but that's perfectly fine because I love doing it. So Fred Warner inks a 3-year, $63 million deal, $56 million guaranteed, and he'll be making $21 million a year. When we look at his stats, 98 tackles, 1 sack, 4 forced fumbles, 11.9 missed tackle percentage. Folks, he is the one, not the two. He is one of the best middle linebackers in the league right now. And it was only right for the 49ers to make sure that they take care of their guy. Which is great, because what we're starting to see now is somewhat of a resurgence in the middle linebacker position. Because for the longest time, middle linebackers really weren't as useful, I think, is the best way to say it, because of the rule changes. Everybody knows prior to this point, you had the Ray Lewises of the world, the Derrick Brookses of the world, London Fletchers and Larry Foots, and all of those great middle linebackers. But then we went through a period where, of course, the rules changed, and so you couldn't be as physical as how you used to be in the early 2000s. And so in doing so, everybody began to diminish how high they wanted to draft middle linebackers. Not to mention, we also started to see a lot of busts when it comes to drafting first-round middle linebackers as well. But now what you're starting to see is a lot of middle linebackers such as Patrick Queen, Roquan Smith, Fred Warner, just to name a few, who are getting paid, who are really effective. Now, when you probably look at those stats from Fred Warner, you're probably thinking, you mean to tell me they reset at the market for this? When you turn on that tape, Fred Warner is a beast. Fred Warner is everywhere near the football. Football goes, Fred Warner is in 5 feet away from it. He's either making the tackle, making the pick, making the fumble. He's doing something. That is who Fred Warner is. And he plays such a pivotal role, not only on this team, but on the defense. He is the heart and soul of this defense. So it was only right that they do so. Now, as I've said before with the whole Brock Purdy thing, the clock is ticking. It's time for this team to start winning. It's time for them to really show that they are a true dominant team. You have the easiest schedule in the league. It's time for you to win a championship. If you don't win a championship this year, I'm going to have a lot of serious conversations about Kyle Shanahan moving forward. Because right now, the deck is stacked in your favor. You have the easiest schedule. You don't have a lot of tough opponents that you have to face. And you have a late bye week. So you are in a good position. The only team that you really have to worry about in your division is who? The Rams. The Seahawks, I feel like, are still trying to find themselves offensively, as well as the Cardinals. So if you can get past the Rams, or at least break even with the Rams, then all you really have to worry about is who? The Vikings, possibly, the Lions, the Bears, and the Eagles. That's it. And all those other teams, they can hash it out within their own divisions as well. But I told you so. Remember, I told you so. Stay tuned. Another episode should be coming out fairly soon. Got to work on the talking points. Got a few things we have to talk about, grades and all that other stuff and more. But as always, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. Back to editing I go. If this episode doesn't come out the same day that I recorded it, then it will be coming out tomorrow around 8 o'clock. All right? Peace and love. Later.